Hello and good morning, everyone. My name is Adam. I'm head of marketing at the ISM. I'd like to welcome you to this live webinar. It's our second one in the series. We're joined today by three ISM fellows. I don't know which order they're in on my screen, but there's Peter Colman from Simon-Kucher and Partners. There is Paul from Yara and Andy Matthews from Siemens. In the next few moments, they'll be talking to us about sales strategy or target setting, and I'd like to thank them for their time. But before we begin, I thought it would be good to start off with some introductions from each of you. So, Andy, you first, and then we'll just work round to Paul. And
Thanks, Adam. Morning, all. My name's Andy Matthews. I'm a key account manager in the pharma and life science sector for Siemens. So I work with some major companies like GSK, AstraZeneca, Allergan, Ipsen Biopharm, you might have heard of. So I work with those guys to understand their value chain, optimizing their value chain, reducing waste, adherence to legislation through the products and services that Siemens can offer.
And Paul?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Paul Midgley from Yara UK. I'm a business manager in the chemical industry, and the areas that I tend to focus on are energy from waste, which is obviously very topical with the environment at the moment, and also what we call base chemicals, where people use our chemicals as one of the ingredients in a particular chemical process.
And Pete?
Good morning. So Peter Colman, partner at Simon-Kucher and Partners. We're a privately owned consultancy company. We specialize in sales and pricing improvement programs. My particular focus is on industrials, technology, and B2B services clients. So helping them improve or protect revenues and protect profits.
Fantastic. So we're going to set the scene. So the topic is called sales strategy or target setting. What do you all mean by that? You know, how does it impact your daily roles? Why is it important to you? You know, how did this topic come along? So to kick things off again, Andy, over to you. Would like to hear your thoughts.
I'm going first, am I? Okay, every time. Okay. As Adam's aware, I did my dissertation a few years ago, and it was based around sales strategy, and I have quite an avid interest in it. And what fascinates me is that a lot of people are always talking about target setting, they're talking about incentives, you know, it's all financial metrics. And doing my research, I found that actually, you know, sales strategy is not always created, it's not formulated. If it is, it's at the top end, and you know, it doesn't mean much to the subordinate, to the salesperson on the street. So that became quite a fascination for me, and how that's cascaded down to the lower levels, if you like. So, you know, everybody's heard of strategy, whether it's corporate strategy, business unit strategy, product strategy, marketing strategy. There's strategies everywhere. But for me, an overarching sales strategy, you know, it creates clarity, defines how we're going to go to market, what we're going to do, you know, where are we now, where do we need to be, and how are we going to get there?
Fab. And just going to mix up a little bit, Paul. Pete, you next. What's why this topic? Why is this important to you?
Yeah, I think it's a super interesting topic. I mean, for all of our projects, no matter what the individual topic, it's usually a starting position when we're interviewing our senior clients. You know, whether it be a managing director or CEO or a VP of sales or a sales director. You know, how do they think about the market? How do they split that down, you know, across different sectors or across different geographies? How do they think about the customers and the products that they offer to them? Which channels do they go to market with? So to me, it's a super interesting topic.
And Paul?
Yeah, well, I'd have to agree with both of you, insofar as there are companies, and I've worked for several companies over the years, and sometimes you have you know, a general sales strategy, and equally so, it's okay not to have a general sales strategy. It very much depends on the business you're in and the particular role that you're in. You know, there's a thin dividing line between what is a general sales strategy and what is perhaps part of a mission statement for the company that you work for. But I think the more important thing about the sales strategy, or indeed particular targets that the individual is tasked with, is that they need to be clearly identified. You know, as salespeople, we're always being governed and marked by hard numbers, really. We accept that. That's the nature of the beast. That's what we do. But if you've got a strategy that is too, you know, generic, then it's difficult to feel that that's what you're all, you know, going to be doing every day. If you've got a target or strategy, whatever, it needs to be something that you're involved in creating, and that way you can establish a sense of ownership with it. You feel that it is relevant to what you're doing. And if it's too esoteric, then, you know, it's difficult to get interested by, oh, it's Monday morning, let's go and hit that sales target for this week or this month or this quarter. It's got to be something that you feel that, you know, is part of what you do on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, really.
You talk well. You've kind of naturally gone on to my next question, Paul, which is the idea around sort of the team element of it. How do you get involved? How do you get the team involved in every stage of this process? I'm assuming sales strategy and sort of the target setting environment within Yara is quite complicated. So how do you get how could you give us an insight into sort of what you've worked on maybe in the last couple of years?
I mean, it's I've been with Yara for just a touch over 5 years now, and it's important that, you know, you start looking at next year's target in enough time this year for you actually, you know, think strategically, really. So what I've certainly found with Yara and with some of my previous employers is, you know, the end of Q3, you're talking about what next year is going to be like. You know, you've learned about what have been the good things and sometimes bad things that have happened in the present year. And as we all know, you know, targets need to be both achievable, but they should be stretching you. So it's important that your senior management get the people who are working for them, the teams and the individuals, to feel part of that target setting for next year, part of that creating next year's business plan. And that way, as I said before, you know, you start to feel that you are part of it. You do own your part of it as well. And if you can see what your particular sector is going to be contributing to next year's target, you know, you should feel that is a very much a cooperative thing. And in that respect, target setting, you know, for business planning purposes for next year should be a top-down and bottom-up process. You know, everyone should feel part of it, and that way they can, you know, they're more likely to achieve it because they feel like they're involved with it. There's nothing worse than saying, yeah, next year's target it's the same as this year, but 25% more. Thanks for that. Yeah.
Well, I'll get on to you in a moment, Pete. But Andy, in terms of Siemens, large organization, multifaceted. I mean, how do you manage? Just give me an insight into your role within Siemens. Are you managing a specific team? Are you managing multi-sites? How does that look?
Multifaceted, complex business organization is the right word. We're split into verticals, area sales, sales specialists. You know, and the verticals comprise of things like airports, aerospace, water, metals, steels, pharma, chems, all that sort of thing. So, you know, and each, I want to pick up on something Paul said, and each one has its own micro strategy, and I think it's important to be clear to everyone when we say a sales strategy, it's an overarching sales strategy in a complex organization, and particularly business to business environment as well, where the sale tends to be protracted. It can take, we've just won a project that's taken nearly 3 years to pull off, and I think that operating in these silos, these business units, you've got to have an individual sales strategy which is tailored to that sector. You've got to know your customer, but picking up on what Paul said is that clarity to the whole organization, that overarching sales strategy, I think is important. I think we've all been there as a newbie, you pitch up and you meet your new sales manager and he says, oh, okay, yeah, Andy, yeah, here's your car keys, here's your laptop, here's your mobile phone, right, we need £1 million in the first year, 2 million in the second, and you go, how am I going to do this? So people need guidance, they need a framework, they need some boundaries to operate within, especially when they're new people. But that can be that can be counterproductive for people who like autonomy and don't like to be micromanaged. So within Siemens, we are given autonomy. We're treated as sales professionals. We're given boundaries. We're given a sales strategy. We're given targets, and then we devise the local strategy with our customer.
Pete, I'll get onto in a second. This is quite fun. I'm going to forget some of your names halfway through this. It has happened in the last webinar, so if I mistakenly call you something that I'm not meant to, apologies now. But Andy, you spoke about sort of one of the things that sort of rang true in that what you just said is, how do you manage? What does the technology look like at Siemens in terms of managing pipelines, managing clients, managing processes? Because I'm assuming, is there any competition between different areas of the business? Do you find that if you're closing in on one deal that someone else might want to get involved? Is Siemens using one technology, or is it very confused within it? I'm hoping you guys have one thing that you to.
I think we use a derivative. Well, it is Salesforce. I think like a lot of people out there, the CRM is Salesforce, which has been deployed nearly a year ago. And it's everyone's getting used to it, and it's a lot better, I have to say. There has been conflict previously, and this is where the strategy comes in, where you've got 2 business units or 2 sales teams. And for example, I can't go into the nitty-gritty of internal politics, but what I can say is, if you've got an OEM team, but you've got an aerospace team. So the aerospace team will be looking at the end users and the aerospace, but also they might be looking at an aerospace OEM or a supplier. But the OEM team might be looking at that as well. And that's where you can get crossover. Well, that's my customer. No, it's not. That's what I'm working with. And that's where the clarity needs to be defined, and where the sales strategy, market segmentation, who's dealing with what, and providing that clarity across the sales team. Because if you don't do that, you get infighting. Sales managers of particular teams haven't got control then. But then what about the customer? The customer can see this. So while you're fighting over who's doing what, your competitors come in and stealing that business.
So, Pete, in terms of, you've listened to Paul and Andy's responses as a professional within Simon-Kucher and the organisation you represent. Do you find any similarities to what they're saying? Is there anything that you'd like to add? Points?
Yeah, I think certainly Paul talked about, when someone new was coming into an organisation. I mean, we would often ask, what's sort of the induction training that explains the sales strategy. So, I think we generally expect the senior members within the sales team to be able to articulate it and talk about it in general. But we often find is it's not actually documented somewhere. It's not written down somewhere. And I think some of the other topics that Paul mentioned about it being generic, I think where it really becomes interesting is when you sort of think about some of the trade-offs. You've only got so many salespeople. So how are you going to best deploy those salespeople across different parts of the market to get the best outcome from revenue or profit, but without exploding your cost to serve? It's a balancing act. an interesting thing we find when we sort of go in with some of our clients and we ask them to describe the market. You know, we draw out a grid and we'll say, you know, if you put all of the different sectors here, and for example, you put, you know, the different geographies, it could be country, it could be regions. Tell us in each of those squares, you know, is that an area that's growing? It's got opportunity. Is it an area that's shrinking? Are you defending in that area? You're the incumbent, but you've got some aggressive competition, or this is complete white space. You know, we've never gone after it. No one else is really tackling it. Really important to get something like that picture and get it down. When we ask, you can ask 5 people to draw that picture, and each person draws a different picture. Now, we've probably got some biases, some, you know, experience and anecdotes that makes them draw that picture. And it's not necessarily wrong, but when we get them all together and then get them to talk through, that's when you actually get some of this idea that, yeah, actually, do you know what? We've never really gone after this area, and we should double down on that. And this other area of defense, let's make sure we're not letting someone in, but maybe we're spreading ourselves too thin. You know, we sort of talk about peanut butter. Have you just spread it evenly across everything, or have you picked 3 or 4 areas that you think are really good potential for growth and focus on that? Now, that's in a normal situation. I think, you know, what we've got at the moment is demands are completely changed because of COVID. So now, how does the strategy change now? Because you might have historically had great business going into hotels or restaurants or something like that. That demand is going to have gone down. So which other parts of the market have you maybe got an opportunity to offset? So that's for me a couple of the points, which is it documented? And then does it break down sufficiently that we can prioritize? And that's the key point for me. Do we focus our effort where we're going to get the best return out of the available resources?
Who do you spoke about sort of getting into businesses and helping them and things like that. But I'm assuming these businesses are obviously not your Uncle Bob's store on the corner. These are huge organizations. Who do you, when you're looking at a business like Yara or Siemens or etc., who do you report into? Who is your, because you don't want, forgive me, I may not know much about your industry, but I'm assuming when you're going into a business, you might want to speak to one person and one person alone for them to communicate back, because otherwise you'll get conflicting ideas about the strategy. Is that a challenge? What sort of?
Yeah, I mean, our usual key sponsor for a project would be either the CEO, MD, or it would be a VP of sales or a commercial director, someone of that. It's always on the commercial side. It's never on operations or anything like that. So it would vary a little bit depending on the nature. Some of our clients are big corporate, and in that case, we're probably operating within a business unit. So, you know, it'd be looking at, for example, the heating and ventilation department of building technologies, or you know, the medical division or something like that. Clients, lots of our clients are private equity backed, so they might be a portfolio company and right. Not particularly big corporate, you know, somewhere 20 million, 50 million turnover, with a different set of challenges. Theirs is probably, you know, how do they grow? Where do they make sure that they're not in maybe as mature a market, and where are there opportunities there, without necessarily the huge resources that sit behind it, you know, in terms of, you know, the existing sales team. You know, they're probably building it. They're trying to say, what does a world-class sales engine look like? That's where we want to get to. So very different natures. Some of our clients, for example, in the US, particularly Silicon Valley, are high growth, you know, unicorns or to be unicorns. So it's quite diverse set of clients, but it's always someone with a commercial head up, unless it's a pricing project. Sometimes in those topics, CFO might be the major sponsor.
Okay, Paul, you I think this question goes on to you a little bit in terms of the success of everything comes down to training. It'd be interesting to hear from you first, then Andy, about what the induction process is for salespeople at both your organisations and how that helps your businesses thrive.
Well, yeah, I think as Andy mentioned, if you've been in sales long enough, you will have had that job where you turn up on Monday morning and they give you the keys to the company car, they give you the laptop, and by the following Tuesday, you're out on the road. They've given you a.
I'm cutting in. What was your first sales car? What was it?
First sales car was a metallic aubergine, which was a very nice colour, Vauxhall Cavalier.
Oh, showing your age now.
2-litre CDI.
Andy? Oh no!
British Racing Green.
Can you divulge your first sales car? Your first car in sales? What was it?
Who?
We're digressing. All right, Paul, back.
It makes it interesting.
Equally so, and especially with Yara, I might add, and I hope my previous boss is listening. I think there's plenty of research that shows the longer the induction process, the more likely you are to get better results, better retention, and better business out of a new joiner. And I certainly would hope that's the case with myself. The induction is an important piece of joining a company, because it can give you the written sales strategy or whatever sort of formalized documentation is available. But it's only really by sitting down or doing some joint calls with one of your new colleagues that you sort of take on the actual company's strategy. And I'm assuming that you haven't got any shysters and fraudsters as part of the sales team. There are ways of doing things, and you can pick up a lot of that by spending time with your new colleagues. You're going to be spending years with them, interacting in meetings, doing joint visits, and all sorts of things. So, the induction process is a vital part of joining a company. You can pick up all sorts of interesting facets about how the company operates. For instance, when I joined Yara, my induction mentor was not somebody who was in the team that I was joining. He was in a different team, and I think that was quite an enlightened choice, really, because you get an alternative view and a different sort of emphasis, really, on how the company works. And again, something that Peter mentioned about when you're going into a new customer, it's generally exclusively commercial people who you're dealing with. I mean, one of the things that Yara tries to emphasize is cooperation between people, and that's both vertical and horizontal, different business units, different levels of management. Getting production people involved in your sales meetings, whether they are physical meetings or virtual meetings, is important, because I've worked for companies where the two elements of operations, production, were completely divorced from sales process. And what happened, of course, is they didn't see what really they contributed to my sales strategy, my target. Whereas if we involve people from operations, they see how they fit in to the overall plan. If we're short of product, or there's a delay or a technical issue preventing production, I need to know so that I can pass it on to my customer. Okay. my former boss is one of his favorite phrases and very valuable is you have to manage your customers' expectations. If you're going to be 5 days late delivering that product, tell him, because he might say, "Oh, that's good. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I know about it. I can tell my colleagues we're going to be okay with that." Far better that it gets to 10 o'clock on Friday. He's expecting it to be delivered 2 hours previously, and then he rings up and finds out it ain't going to happen until next Tuesday. There's a breakdown of trust there. So it's important to keep all elements of the company involved in what is your sales strategy, what is your target for this year. It's a vital thing to get hold of.
Okay, Andy, what about you? Internal sort of training within Siemens, what success look like, and if you can give us that would be fab.
Yeah, I mean, obviously in a large organization, there's lots of training, lots of external training courses, internal training courses. You go through an induction program. There's a lot of online content. You have to get through the driver learning programs, the health and safety, the how to sit correctly at your desk, these half-hour learning sessions. But on the sales side, there's what we call SP1, 2, and 3. SP3 is for the salesperson, SP2 is for the sales manager, and SP1 is for like key account management, CAMs, GAMs, and that sort of salesperson. So you can go on those courses. I think the first one is a week's course. The SP2 is I think another week, but SP1 is it can take about a year, and that's working with your actual customers as a key account manager. Externally, there's external bodies that Siemens use that they've used for years. There's also vertical sales courses, so they teach you about media presentation, how to present professionally, and that sort of thing. So it is quite structured. But the induction, it's some years since it's about 13 years in October I've been with Siemens. So it's sometimes since I went through that. But I've seen new people join and seen what they go through. But a lot of this is with your line manager.
Sorry to cut in. What was your first role at Siemens, and where are you now in terms of?
I was an application specialist. So I was looking at on the technical side. So I was working with customers to look at their application, their issue, and provide a technical solution. That's what I first started off with. Then I moved into business development. So using developing business for those products and solutions. And obviously you move on and up to a vertical role, which is what I'm doing now.
I'm going to ask the next question sort of to all of you, for any of you to sort of pipe up. I know that's a bit risky, but let's go for it. All this training that companies undertake, something somewhere has always gone wrong. And as much as everyone loves talking about like successes, what has gone wrong? And when it goes wrong, what's the reaction? How do you get forward? What do you learn? What mistakes have you learned personally, professionally, as a company-wide? Who wants to lead on that?
Yeah, I can take that. I mean, I think related to this topic of sales strategy, and it is part training, but I think it's broader than that. Called development. I think the interesting part is when we see for our clients who make the transition from maybe sales manager or sales director then into commercial director or commercial VP, because it's quite a different skill set and it's a different way of thinking about the business. So having more understanding and insight around looking after the margins, balancing the cost and the revenue, and thinking more strategically, I think that's quite an important juncture. I think when people normally think about sales training, it is normally at, let's say, more the sales rep level, account manager level. But I think if you've got a sales academy, you also need some of the higher level topics to create the right sort of leadership behaviors from your next VP of sales or commercial director.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, sorry, I'll say to follow on from Peter. I think We've probably all experienced being in teams where our managers may well have been very, very good salespeople, but have been shocking managers. And the two are, as Peter has said, definitely two completely separate skill sets. It is possible to be managed by someone who's not very good at sales. And again, I suspect there's plenty of evidence out there that we've been with that as well. If you can get the two combined, great. Everything's hunky dory. I think the management of a sales strategy, and therefore how it is relevant to teams, is a function of, as we said right at the start, the ownership of feeling that you are part of that strategy. And a strategy is pointless. The target setting is pointless unless you monitor it, and that should be done both by the individual and also by his manager. And it needs to be done on a regular basis. And if the manager sees something that he is not expecting or is unhappy with, then that needs to be addressed there and then. If you're falling short at the end of Q1, identify what the problem is, and you may well get back on track by Q2. Falling short in Q1 and not discussing it by the end of Q3, I don't think you'll be getting that annual bonus. Targets need to be monitored. They need to be reported, and again, this is a top-down, bottom-up thing. Everybody needs to get involved in it, and if you don't, what's the point in having the targets in the first place? You need to track how you're doing against your business plan, your strategy, your annual target, if that's how it's assessed. Just having it there as what did one of you describe it as, shelfware? If it just sits there and you only look at it in November of the year, and you think, I wonder how I'm doing about this year's target, that's way too late. It's you should be tracking all this, your opportunities, your pipeline. These are all the buzzwords, and as Andy was saying about your Salesforce or whichever CRM you're with, that provides you with the ability to track it. And if you're not achieving target, or you are achieving target, both of those things need to be discussed with your manager, possibly with the rest of the team. I know one of my previous employers, if you're successful, then you're doing something right. You're probably doing lots of things right. Well, why don't you ask, can you mentor some of the people in your team who aren't quite performing? That might be an introduction to management. It might be something you find you quite like. But if you've got ability and an excess of ability, then use that. And then the person who's at 75% of his target feels that, well, I'm a bit down on my target, but the company is actually wanting to invest time and effort in getting me back on target. And they don't feel quite so bad about it. There's no point in getting to the end of the year and saying, only 2 of you hit target, so here's a big bonus for you 2. The rest of you underperformed throughout the year. For you.
Just to Andy. Andy, what in terms of it's a 2-part question really, which is going to flow on to then to Paul and Pete again. But what does sort of the training element look like for you? But then also, how does it look like in terms of success? I mean, the impact on the customer when all of this goes right, all of it goes right. Nothing goes wrong. Well, something always goes wrong. But what that success look like for your organization?
Well, firstly, I think training. If you're a newbie, you need that training. If you're a junior salesperson with 1 or 2 years experience, then I think training is good. Let's plug the ISM diploma, etc. But I think there's only so much training that you can have. You could have all the training in the world and still struggle, and then you have to say, is this job for me? And Peter mentioned one thing about the personality of a person. If those people who become VP, sales director, managing director of large companies, it's because they've got a quality. it's not because they've had so much training that's made them great. They've got a quality. It's their personality. It's I guess it's the level of intelligence that they've got. You know, they've got a vision. They can communicate. There's leadership qualities and all the other attributes that go with it. But I think a lot of it is it comes down to the sales manager, that middle tier, to understand his team, what he's got. You know, he could provide them with more training, but there's got to be an end to it. And I think really what he has to do then is sit down and go, right, I've got a team. Unless they leave, I'm stuck with them. It's my job to model them and focus them in the areas and the sectors. And now we're talking more sales strategy of where I want them to focus. So that's the leadership style. Also motivational language. There's a myriad of books and literature out there talking about ML, empowerment, and focusing that individual to bring in results. We're all different. Some of us like, we've lost Adam, haven't we? But some of us like autonomy. Some of us like the boundaries to be clearly defined. You know, and I think it comes down to a lot, which we haven't mentioned as far as I can. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but you know, is the culture of the organisation. So we can talk about strategy all day long, but unless the culture's there that embrace strategy, then forget it. And I think there's a famous saying that the culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I heard this a few months ago, and I did Google it last night just to find out who it was. And there's a guy called Peter Drucker. Originally, that's where it originally came from. But I let the audience Google that. But you know, we can talk about strategy, target setting, incentives, productivity, operational effectiveness. We can talk about it all day, but unless the culture's there, and we're understanding the people in front of us and how we go to market, our focus, then it's all going to fall apart. Has Adam disappeared?
I think he's dropped up. Maybe it's bad internet.
Here he is.
He's coming back. Everybody.
He's coming back. Large as life and 3 times as cheerful. I think your point about culture is very good, Andy. I mean, back in the 90s, I was working for a breathing apparatus company, and we got a new sales director. He was actually a New York Italian, and he was brilliant. Put him in front of the customer. I had a particular fire brigade who we were having problems with quality of our equipment, and it's rather a critical thing for a fireman to have a breathing apparatus that he can be completely confident in. And the sales director came with me, and we went to see this particular fire brigade. I was expecting to get a hard time from them, and within 5 minutes, the fire brigade technical officer, you know, a very senior officer in the county fire brigade, was eating out of his hand. The guy was very, very good in front of customers. He didn't lie. You know, he was brutally honest. He said, "This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it, and this is when we're going to have it done by." And he gave it in such a manner that the customers said, "Okay, well, that sounds good. You know, we'll put our trust in you." And we came out of the meeting, and I was absolutely staggered how well it had gone. The interesting thing was he said, "What we're going to do is we're going to change the culture in this company. We know we're not going to be the cheapest." And he said, "I don't want to be the cheapest. I don't want people to say so-and-so has the cheapest breathing apparatus on the market." He said, "I want people to say their kit is blooming good and they are an easy company to do business with." You know, it was like the Nike tick, you know, just do it. And he managed to get the company to believe that was our particular USP in that case, that we were an easy company to do business with. If something needed doing, just do it. We can sort the paperwork out after. We can sort the payment out after. But if the customer is up against it, time, whatever, sort it out. And we managed to change the culture of the company, and it was very, very enlightening to be part of that. If you can achieve it, then it's a nice position to be in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, one of the we talked two things there, but strategy and the culture. One of the interesting places where you see both of those two things coming together is, for example, when it's mergers and acquisitions, and we see two sales teams being merged together. And how does that work? It could easily be that both have got an absolutely spot on strategy. It's likely they've got quite a different sales culture. So how do we merge the best bits of these two organizations? And that's in particular where it's really useful to have something documented. You know, where are we positioned in each of these markets? What we don't want to do is cannibalize our nice high margin products because another team is used to selling more mid-level and don't realize that actually they can command higher prices in this particular market because the value that the customer receives is so much higher. So that sort of is probably one of the key junctions, I think, of when this strategy and this culture come together, and actually having something defined. You know, how are we going to approach customers where we might now overlap? Which products are we going to sell where we've got products that overlap? You know, do we have a similar approach to our pricing strategy? Are we premium or are we mid-level, etc.? So that's a super important point. These inflection points is where it really comes to the crunch.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't panicking at all when I got cut off, but never mind.
We carried on. We didn't.
Yeah. You don't need me, right? There are, with just under 500 subscribers on this, registered viewers on this channel this morning, a couple of questions. What I'll do is we may not get through all of them, but I'm going to ask each presenter to ask one question and then move on to another one and move on to another one. If we do run out of time, I'm going to ask all the presenters to get in touch with you on a separate cover, and then you'll also be hearing from them through a Solus email as well. So I will do my best. There's a couple of questions that you may have to dig deep into your brains, because I think some of these were asked when we were talking about things half an hour ago. So, Paul.
Yeah.
Who should actually set the targets? Individually, a team, or the company?
I don't think it should be the individual, because we're all human. And if someone said, "Can you set next year's targets, Paul?" I'd say, "Yeah, this year's target plus 2%." As I said earlier, you know, targets should be both achievable, but they should stretch you. And I feel that whilst you can be part of the target setting, the strategy setting process, I feel it's always worthwhile if your manager, or indeed, you know, the senior managers in the company, set strategy and set targets. I would say invariably my targets have been slightly higher than I would have set myself. And that's no bad thing. You know, the fact that it makes you work that little bit harder is a good thing, both for the company and for yourself. And ultimately, you know, it should be a good thing for the customer. So if everyone is involved, you feel that you've got an input, but I think it's only wise that the targets, KPIs, strategy, whatever, involves some element of the corporate side of things, as well as just what is relevant to myself.
Yeah, so I've just got a message from my fellow presenters. The questions are actually in the, if you look on the right-hand column, there's a little question mark. Those are the questions I'm reading off. So it's basically potluck. You can always sort of ask you can always tell me to ask someone else, so don't worry. So here's one for you, Andy. In light of lockdown, how have your prospecting targets been impacted?
Oh, prospecting, yes. Highly impacted, I'd say. For example, I contacted someone. I went to visit them in January, followed up with no response just about February time, and then just at the end of March I made contact again, and he said, "Look, could you just wait till this settles down? We're having some major issues on site, and we need to get over this first before we engage." And I'd offered an online meeting and a presentation, so it has really impacted. Saying that, there's a lot of projects that are still going on that kicked off last year that are still filtering through. It's actually the project delivery now that's that's an issue. Obviously, they've got less people, the customer's got less people on site, and there's a lot more form filling to take place, risk assessment, etc., etc. So it has impacted things, but I do see things getting better. I think going forward in this sector, the biopharm sector. I think a lot of people have heard that word over the last few months, and I'm feeling positive going forward.
Fab. Paul, here's one for you. How do you encourage salespeople, maybe salespeople that report to you or don't, to actually ask for help when they need it? Because I'm assuming salespeople can be quite cocky sometimes. They don't need any help.
No, they're all absolutely perfect, really. It goes down as we've touched on previously, is a particular style of management or the fact that you are acting as a manager. There are elements of different styles of management that are relevant to sales. They've got to trust you for one, that if they identify what they perceive as a fault or a shortcoming, they need to know that if they pass that information to you, you will use it in the right manner, and that involves trust. If someone said, "I'm really struggling with cold calling," or whatever, you don't want to then blab that out in the next sales meeting saying, "Oh, Bob says he's useless at cold calling. We've all seen his figures. I can understand that." There is a process where you identify, exactly what the problem is, and if you push that back onto the sort of sales training that I'm sure we've all had, you can apply it similar to objection handling. If one of your team members says, "I've got a problem with such, or I think I need more training in such and such," then use your objection handling techniques and dig down and identify, is that actually the problem? Are there other elements that may be causing the particular problem? And once you've got to the nub of what the particular issue is, again, you've got to establish a strategy to alleviate that particular problem. It's going to be something that the particular team member wants to be involved in, and that is very likely because they've identified it as a point for them to improve on. So every particular issue that comes up needs to be treated in the same broad principles, but with a different strategy. And I think trust and belief that you will help to alleviate that particular problem. And I've seen that on many occasions. And I'm still friends with the people who identified the problem, so it clearly worked at some point.
Okay. I've just told the presenters that in case I get cut off, they're responsible for ending this webinar, so no pressure there, guys. Right, Pete, what's your experience with a strategy which has changed in the middle of the year, and how have sales teams been impacted in this in a hypothetical case such as this?
Like a hypothetical case of a couple of months back. We've not talked about the C word. Of COVID, but that's something that's massively impacted the strategies of teams. We've got a situation where your field sales team can't get access to clients, so it's virtual selling. There's probably a range of sectors that are doing well and other sectors that are not doing so well. So, for example, grocery, health, pharmaceutical, things like that are probably doing pretty well. Gyms, hotels, restaurants, etc., less well. So, that's not even a hypothetical case. That's a real case of a couple of months, and you need to adjust quickly. What we're seeing with our clients is, and what we're helping them with, is a couple of things. I think as it first hit, there was let's say, revenue protection. How can we make sure that our most important customers, our key accounts, are protected both from a supply, service delivery, etc. We saw quite a lot of people who were probably more on the hunter roles being pulled in to just help protect the big accounts because it was hard to prospect with new customers. And then focusing on some really important things like cash flow and the payment terms, and making sure that we're getting cash in the door and keeping solvent. So, I think we've got through but that was a very short-term adjustment. Now what we're hearing from our client is the sort of preparing for the restart. So they may be in lockdown, or they may be subdued. They may have some of their teams currently furloughed, but they're waiting for them to come back. And we're all looking at, what will come out from the government about this. But how do we then re-energize? How do we go to market? Where are we going to focus our effort and our time? And I suppose more time, because if we're not traveling and we're not on the road, maybe we can get through, more meetings in a day and be more efficient. So it's not a hypothetical case, it's a real case. It's something that, lots of people are looking at as we speak.
Andy, last question for you, and then we're going to do last minute wrap ups from everyone else. But with the rest of the year being uncertain, can you hear me?
Yep, carry on with the.
Please tell me my internet's not about to die again. Okay. With the rest of the year uncertain, how do you suggest to adjust your sales strategy to an unknown short-term future? How are you planning for the year ahead? If COVID goes on for much longer, what's life like at Siemens?
Firstly, there's the argument whether you have a rigid sales strategy or a flexible one, and I think you've got to give a sales strategy time to evolve. I did watch a certain person on YouTube who's on this call. He was presenting to a certain water company recently, and I absolutely agree with what he said. That successful businesses, they let their strategy play out. They know their customers. They're very disciplined. They're very focused. And I think you've got to be that. This COVID, nobody knows. Let's be honest. What's going to happen in October? No one's got a crystal ball. But there may be people will have to sit down and redefine their go-to-market approach. Revisit target areas like Peter said. Hotels and gyms, how quickly are they going to pick up compared to other sectors, and maybe we need to realign it elsewhere. For me, I see the investment in the pharma and biopharm sector. We're just releasing a biopharm report, an industry report, which is released imminently. I see things positive there, and I think that it's highlighted the sector, it's highlighted the industry. Of course, that then comes into something. If you're looking into sales strategy, I think a lot of people might have heard of Porter's 5 forces. If you did any training, and of course one of those is actually new threats, new people coming into the market because they recognise that actually biopharm, there's something here that we need to get involved. Whether it's software solutions, whether it's production, whether it's OEM equipment they're supplying. So we've got to keep our guard to look at who are the new entrants and just be aware there.
Okay. Well, I'm now going to invite all the presenters to do a 1 minute. They've not really been prepped for this until about 5 minutes ago, so bear with me. This is planning at its highest. But I'm going to ask all the presenters to go away, or actually not go away, but give me a minute's wrap-up summary of key takeaways, final messages, things like that. So, who would like to go first?
I'll go first. Key takeaway messages. I think if you look at the title of this that the three of us devised, we all hear of. I've got 1 minute. Yeah, we all hear of target setting. Is that sales strategy? In my eyes, absolutely not. It's not benchmarking. It's not target setting. It's not operational effectiveness. It is how are we going to be effective in our marketplace? And I think if the salesperson has clarity, is involved with the process, as is the middle manager, then they become more confident in what they do, and that confidence rolls over to the customer interaction, and the customer feels more confident about their capability in delivering that solution or that product to them, become a trusted advisor, become a partner with that customer. So I think it is multifaceted. There's no one size fits all, but some key takeaways for me is to devise an overall sales strategy, a macro sales strategy. But if you're in a business sector which has got lots of business units, individual products, solutions, then you may need to tailor that into sort of a micro sales strategy, which is tailored to that particular sector. But for clarity, an overarching sales strategy is definitely a recommendation.
You did that in 57 seconds. Not that I was timing you or anything. Paul, you next. Can you be?
Okay, well, I'll try for 58 then. I think the important thing is certainly, as Peter mentioned, the dreaded C word. We live in uncertain times as they are at the moment, and anything you can do to enhance the certainty, the security that you offer to your customers, if you can do that now, that will be paid back in the future, I'm certain. The same applies to your workforce, whether they are people who report directly to you or people who have been office-based before and are now working from home. They are also looking for some certainty and security. Again, anything you can do, whether that's on a mental health awareness thing or practical purposes of making sure their tech works when they're sat at the kitchen table, do those things that will help people, and they will be it'll be time well spent. And the other thing from a business strategy point of view, I would say, is if you can identify the things that you do well, not just in the last 3 weeks, not just the things that you do in the last 6 months, but the things that traditionally you do well, then continue to do those, because that's the best way to move through what is uncertain times now. But it's also the best way to move forward into next year.
Definitely over a minute, so you're in second place, right? And Pete, one last. Can you set the bar for a minute? Go.
I'll have a go. So from our point of view, we'd be looking at agility. Can you be agile as a commercial team? That means, can you be agile in terms of where you deploy the salespeople? So maybe into sectors that they haven't worked in before, but we know are experiencing growth. Can you help them and prioritize which products they should push? That the customers are likely to be buying maybe simpler products or lower end products, so help them focus on that. And the third part would be, can they think about pricing and how they adjust that for these times? There'll be some areas where they can do price increases. There'll be others where they need decreases, but just be super careful of what you do on profit from that. Decreasing price may well not bring you volume.
Okay. Well, look, it's we've got about 3 minutes for the webinar finishes. There have been a flurry of questions. What I'll be doing at the end of this webinar is I'll be giving all the presenters a quick call as a follow-up, but I'll also be sending them the questions with the full details of the people who've asked them, so they can actually come back to you and answer those questions in a little bit more detail.
Absolutely.
But from the ISM and me personally, to get organizations, people from the organizations represented here, Simon-Kucher, Yara, and Siemens on a webinar for an hour has been incredibly rewarding for me, and not only for me, but also for our members. So thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to take part in this, and thank you for your patience and all the rest of it. You deserve an OBE for being on a webinar with me anyway. But yeah, thank you very much, everyone. You'll get an on-demand view of this, so you can watch this at your own convenience. And I'll also be inviting Siemens, Yara, and Simon-Kucher to send out solus emails to the webinar audience with any sort of follow-ups that are important to their business. And if you wish to contact them on LinkedIn, please do, and all the rest of it. But it's a goodbye for me, Paul, Pete, Andy.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.